and welcome to the Canadian Kitchen Cabinet Association, also known as CKCA. My name is Sandra Wood, and I'm the Executive Director. Back in September of 2023, we hosted a national forum in Moncton, New Brunswick. During that event, we welcomed more than 100 manufacturers, suppliers, and dealers to the occasion. As part of the event, we hosted a presentation by Regine Bellevaux, who's acting Regional Deputy Director with the Innovators Experience Branch at Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. This presentation was designed to shed a light on how companies can seek technology funding to help advance their business. We know that in doing so, companies can not only work to address their labor shortage challenges, but they can also improve their competitiveness. But the process of going after any kind of funding can be an overwhelming and time-consuming process, especially if you don't understand where to look or who to talk to. Luke Elias, president of Muskoka Cabinet Company, is somebody that has experience in going after government funding. And so he was very pleased to introduce the session to the group. And we audio recorded it, and we've also captured the slides, which we're bringing you here today in this recorded session. So please take the time, listen to what's being presented, and we hope that you find this helpful. And if you have any questions, give us a call, 613-493-5858. Get in touch with the CKCA. We're always here to help.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started with the next session. What a great day today. Did you guys enjoy it? It's beautiful weather. I told you, we ordered this for you guys. It's always like this in the Maritimes. So I just wanted to introduce the session by introducing Luke Elias. And basically, Luke is, as most of you know, a pioneer in innovation in his shop. So, I'll let Luke talk about it, but it's quite inspiring. And I think we're going to be touring your shop in 2025. That's amazing. And Luke, as anyone knows who's spoken with him, is very passionate about this topic and in our industry, and so it's a pleasure to have you here to speak to us, Luke. And I know it was kind of chucked together at the last minute here, so we'll give you a pass. And and we have also Régent Béliveau from the Innovation Canada. So without further ado, I would like to invite you guys to do your thing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. Good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned this morning, our tech committee wants to provide CKCA members a pathway to the most appropriate digital adoption for their business. This will be done through a series of webinars and by partnering with industry experts and advisors. So today we have, and I'll introduce Régent in a moment, we have a speaker today to start this series off, and he's going to focus on funding available for digital technology adoption. And Sandra asked me to speak a little bit about Muskoka's journey with funding. So to that end, over the last 8 years, Muskoka has received $2.4 million in funding from about 10 different programs. 75% of this funding was non-repayable, so grant money. Now there's differences between funding for implementing technology that's already commercialized and, say, off the shelf, and funding that is used for technology development. Now, I don't want to steal your thunder, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but there is certainly a lot more funding available for technology creation. Having said that, if you modify an off-the-shelf technology or current technology and apply it to a process in your business that may not have been done or not readily available, then you would qualify or could qualify for the technology creation stream of funding. And especially if there is risk involved and if you generate intellectual property, IP. And this is what Muskoka does. Our continuous improvement team not only attends industry trade shows like IWF and WMS in Toronto, but we also attend shows like Automate in Detroit and CMTS, which is the Canadian Manufacturing Technology Show, which is happening this week in Toronto. And two of our continuous improvement team members are attending that show actually tomorrow. So what we look for at these shows, and Automate being in Detroit, and I think they also offer one in Chicago, we're looking for technology that is used. They could automate, a lot of it's automated automotive technology, but we're looking for technology that we could implement in the wood industry. To give you an example, when we were at Automate, we saw how much the vision systems have come a long way. And in our industry, vision could be used for detecting imperfections in finishing product, or perhaps detecting whether there's edge banding or not on a panel and could be returned to the edge bander, or things like that. We also have seen a lot of improvement in AGVs or AMRs, the automated ground vehicles, which in our industry could be used for hauling parts around the shop floor. And so when you, or collaborative robots, of course, when you take this technology, and an AMR is, off the shelf, but if you adapt it to something to save material handling in your operation, then, and this doesn't have to necessarily be done by your own team. I mean, the funding can be available to hire integrators or outside programmers to help you with this. But then you will qualify, or hopefully qualify, for the deeper funding for creation. So we, one of the things that we do was kind of mandated by IRAP, is create a 5-year technology plan. Every 5 years, we look 5 years into the future, and we have to put it in writing. 5 years, so this year we're in the last year of our last 5-year plan, and we are developing a robotic assembly line. Now, this was on my plan 5 years ago, and if you asked me, did I have any clue how this was going to work, I had no clue. So it could be something that you just thought would be nice in your shop to have 5 years from now. And, if the technology, it just so happens that collaborative robots have gotten to the point where we can actually make this happen, or we're hoping to make it happen. There's a lot of risk involved, and but there will be IP created, and this is how we managed to attain a sizable sum of money from IRAP to do this project. The last thing that I wanted to mention, and this actually came from a conversation I was having with Sarah at lunch from WebCab. I was asking her how business was. Yeah, I said, you must be busy because of the slowdown. People must now have the time to look into making some improvements. And she said, no, it's the opposite. People call us when they're so busy that they need some help and relief. That's when they call looking for technology. But at Muskoka, we do the exact opposite. And just to give you an example, one time in our history, back in 2014, it's the first time this happened in 30 years, we had absolutely no work. I remember walking out to the shop floor in the panel processing department, and on his screen, where all the work orders appear, it was blank. We had no work. And that is when I signed the deal for my first robotic panel processing cell. And why? Because, as you all know, it takes a minimum number of staff to run your factories. And once you go below that, you can't operate. So I knew that business was cyclical. This was going to likely happen again at some point in my lifetime. And I wanted to figure out how we could still run a profitable operation with fewer people when times were tough. And so that's where the automated panel processing cell came in. Nowadays, it's a matter of survival because of the labor shortage that we need to do these things. But I just wanted to, share a little bit about how we do it, and that I encourage you, if you have some downtime, to actually, take a look at some of the processes and see what you can do, especially material handling, to automate. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Régin Béliveau. Régin is the Regional Deputy Director for the Innovation Canada's Accelerated Growth Service. He was kind enough to accept on a sort of the last minute to come and speak to us today about funding. We asked Régin particularly because it's a federal program and we have members from all across Canada, so we wanted something that was relevant. A bit about Régin. He has over 20 years of experience working in the private sector, where he's led regional, national, and international sales operations. Régin used to work as the global sales director for a globally competitive casino and gaming company, and has a reputation for creating strategic alliances that benefit all stakeholders. Since joining Innovation Canada in 2019, Régin now manages the Atlantic Accelerated Growth Service, AGS, team, in order to help Atlantic Canadian companies strategically maximize their growth potential, prioritize growth initiative, and help build or complete their network of government partners. The AGS team helps companies understand the government ecosystem support landscape while helping them increase their visibility across various levels of government throughout the country. This team of private industry experts can help you address your most pressing needs and challenges and dedicate their time to improving your government relations strategy and maximizing your potential program supports. Innovation Canada is a sector of ISED, Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, which houses a mix of funding programs and advisory services such as Strategic Innovation Fund, Innovative Solutions Canada, Global Innovation Clusters, Canadian Digital Adoption Program, Clean Growth Hub, Accelerated Growth Service, and more. So, thank you, Régin, for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me right? Okay. I'm a bit of a wanderer, so I don't know which mic is going to pick me up. Just to give you a little bit more details around ISED, Innovation, Science, Economic Development. I'm not going to lie, it's probably the most complicated department in the Government of Canada because it holds about 19 members under its portfolio. So it's huge. It has councils, it has boards, it has agencies, Crown Corp. So it sounds more complicated than it has to be. I'm here to simplify things for all of you. And really, the goal of ISED and Innovation Canada is innovation through science and technology, trade and investment, growth of small, medium enterprises, and economic growth of Canadian communities. Those are the major pillars. Innovation Canada resides underneath ISED, and really, as we've mentioned, we've mentioned their services and funding programs. Now, Innovation Canada is a national kind of out of Ottawa department, but we're small teams scattered across the nation. And some of the services we have is, and I'll talk more about these and briefly about others, because they're not the most probably relevant to you. So I'm going to talk to you about the ecosystem in general more, about all the different partners and kind of lay out a journey, kind of a timeline, a spectrum of support, if you will, and hopefully make things a bit easier. But just to cover a little bit Innovation Canada very briefly, some of the services, including the one that we deliver here in Atlantic and across the nation, is the Accelerate Growth Service, usually focused around growing companies that are innovating, that are on the cusp of exponential growth, and obviously making big investments towards their growth and then needing to leverage those investments. That's who we work with in a whole. But the Business Benefits Finder is a free tool that I'll be talking about. Explore IP and Elevate IP and BizPal are really good services, but more platforms where you can kind of peruse yourselves and then talk to innovation advisors such as my team. Sorry, I'm touching my mic here. Such as innovation advisors and my team to really get a better understanding and kind of work things through. And I think that's the important thing. A lot of these programs sound complicated. They can be complicated. You go on a website, the information sounds vague, purposefully, by the way, just so you know, because we don't want to pigeonhole specific things. We want to try and keep it as vague as possible because there's a lot of things that can fit. Our funding programs are major funding programs, national programs. They're highly competitive. But for example, the Strategic Innovation Fund, Toyota just got an announcement for $700 million. So, I mean, you're talking about large value projects. Michelin tires here in Nova Scotia just got one for $300 million. So this might be out of your scope, and that's fine because there are so many mechanisms and vehicles to help you fund your projects underneath these larger value ones. But these particular programs are really focused around trying to, excuse the bad pun here, but make Canada great again in that sense, just because we're really trying to invest and elevate some of the technologies that we develop here in Canada on a global scale. So it's more of a first to Canada and then that real global potential that we're looking for. But the innovation clusters were literally designed for that. We have 5 across the country. Digital is one. And then advanced manufacturing is another. So those are really cool, but you have to register as a member. There can be sharing of IP, so it might not be the avenue you're looking for, but it's a great consortium to really start leveraging expertise within the cluster and different businesses. So 2 things I really want to talk to you about. One is completely digital, and one is completely personal, which I'm assuming you're all going to kind of lead towards a personal one, which is my team and the innovation advisors across Canada. But the Business Benefits Finder is really interesting. Innovation.canada.ca is your website. You go in, literally brings you, pick French or English, and then you start with drop-down menus. You literally just start selecting what you need, and it's creating a story for you. You can register your email so you can get updates on different programmings. But if you say, hey, I'm this size company with so many employees looking for payroll rebates, I'm looking to hire more people, I'm investing in CapEx, I'm doing this, and you're all clicking these drop-down menus. Again, few minutes, that's all it takes. It'll populate a list. And there's 1,400 plus programs across Canada. Now, the issue is that if I give you a list of 250 relevant programs to your criteria, I guarantee you they don't all fit. So it gets a bit, if you know what you're looking for, you can click, you'll see if they're taking in applications, you can follow the link to the website at the appropriate partner's website, and then start application processes. But if you need to talk to someone, that's where the innovation advisors come into play. So just to close off on the Business Benefits Finder, really easy tool, really easy platform, drop-down menus. You can register your email. You can get updates when programs reopen, when programs are closed, and it kind of gives you that help when you're just kind of in the exploratory phases of potential programming. So the innovation advisors, as Luke mentioned, we're all from the private sector. So we didn't come out of university, start at Government of Canada, and been there our whole careers. We actually started where you are, mostly in SMEs. We're mostly exec level, C-suite, or even entrepreneurs ourselves. And really, we've been through the funding kind of steps with our companies or previous roles, and we're trying to bring that knowledge and expertise to entrepreneurs across Canada. So really, not only do we have a fantastic understanding of different business sectors, because again, we're 30 plus innovation advisors across Canada. We range from VC gurus to crisis management people to literally manufacturing people to green tech and all of these and everything in between. So again, that's why they kind of wanted to recruit us, is that we could kind of touch as many sectors as we could and provide that level of support. So again, we'll give you advice on certain programs. We'll kind of hone in on the right partners you should be introduced to if you don't already know them in your regions. And we'll make sure to kind of make those intros and work through those process, prep you to put your best foot forward when you're having these important conversations. So just kind of giving you an overview, and I'll talk about CDAP after, which is the Digital Adoption Program, which is a fantastic program, by the way, but we'll talk about that in a second. I just wanted to cover a few things. So some of the national priorities for you to wrap your minds around. Priorities just mean that we're focusing on anything that kind of leads down those roads. And obviously we all know that our sustainability targets and green targets are huge. And obviously, you know, the green and circular economy are at the forefront. Digitalization and automation is probably a close second. ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance of companies, making sure your packaging is at the recycled packaging and appropriate packaging and things like that. Some of the main partners you're going to want to entertain while you're kind of thinking of potentially going down these roads are NRC IRAP, your RDAs, so whether it's ACOA, SEDQ, FedDev, FedNor, Pacific Can, Prairies Can, or even Northern Economic Development Agency. These RDAs are usually the stewards delivering a lot of the economic development money for ISED, okay? So they're a huge player strategically for equipment, strategizing and consultants, and then obviously market expansion. Obviously, BDC is you know it as a bank, but it has an amazing branch called the Advisory Services, and that really taps you into the expertise out there. So if you don't know how to automate, that's fine, because you can get money to literally hire a consultant to figure it out for you, and then literally money to start implementing all these different things. So think of it as a journey, think of it as a spectrum, and it's not overly complicated when you've got the right coaching. Types of funding, that too is a bit tricky because everybody thinks you have to repay. Well, most funding are under the repayable nature, most often no interest incurred, okay? So it's you've borrowed money and then you're paying that sum itself. There's contributions, which is a non-repayable contribution, which NRC works that way, so I'll talk about them a bit more in detail, but NRC will help you hire engineers to solve your innovation and implementation issues. Now, if you're hiring internally, they'll pay up to 80% of their wages. If you're hiring externally, so consultants or firms, they'll cover up to 50% of those labor rates to really try and look. Now, the interesting is grants and non-repayables. So those are some often conditional, but non-repayables is literally that perspective. You're putting in, and the typical general rule is a 50-50 split. So when you're thinking of $1 million project, you're in it for about $500,000, and then you can pretty much get $500,000 of federal leverage or program leverage. That being said, certain programs, and depending how strategic you start looking at it, and innovation advisors can help you with that, when you start looking at that, you can actually find opportunities where you can get up to 75% funding. So you're only in it about a quarter of your project cost, which I see some eyes opening up. So I'm glad you're all on board with that. But at the same time, what we want to do is we want to get the whole spectrum of the funding mechanism. So global affairs, if you're exporting, and I've understood, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand if you are exporting, a lot of that export is going to the US, not necessarily overseas, which is fine. because now they've looked at the US as you can split it up into 4 different markets. So usually previously, a few years ago, you had to look at the US as one market. So it would eliminate a lot of the funding opportunities if you had a considerable amount of sales in the US already. But now if you're focused on the Northwest, for example, this Washington area, and you're selling there, but you know there's major opportunities in the Southeast, you can break up the US into the Southeast as well and then get funding for those activities. So very important. But Global Affairs really looks at, it's a non-repayable. They usually go up to 50,000. You can get up to 2 projects per year, so 100,000. And it's a 50-50 split at this time. So what you're looking at is travel costs, potentially entertainment or, your hotels, all those costs, and the eligibility costs are all on the website. But you would literally plan out. Now, the tricky thing with that is that it takes a little bit of foresight of what your activities are going to be, because you don't want to start traveling before your application's been approved, and you don't really want to delay travel in order to get the funding, right? So it takes, you're technically always looking at 6 months ahead. But again, innovation advisors and trade commissioners can help you with those kinds of questions and that outlook. So EDC is a lender, Export Development Canada. They really operate as a bank. They have a VC firm within themselves, so they can invest with you if you're looking to maybe acquire businesses abroad, outside of Canada. They can help you insure your receivables. That's a big one. So if you're taking on a new client, not sure if you're going to get paid, for a small fee, you can get up to 90% of that receivable insured. So if, it tanks or doesn't get paid, you're still covered. So there's a lot of those types of mechanism, but they are a lender, so there is a cost and there is usually a rate on loans. But at the same time, they are there to really look at the export perspective. Regional development agencies kind of dabble in a little bit of everything. But really what they're focusing on is really your productivity and your operational improvements, equipment around that, strategizing and finding the right expertise, and then marketing and commercial development and market development as a kind of a secondary or last step towards their funding. Provincially, I'm not going to speak for every province, and I'm not even going to speak for ONB here in New Brunswick, but I'm just going to mention that most provinces have productivity programs. They have export programs, and their export definition is a bit different. They will focus on looking outside of that province or maybe a Canadian region. So for us, it can be outside of the Atlantic. So if a company from New Brunswick is looking to sell into Quebec, then that would count as exports in the provincial's, in the province's eyes. So the other thing they do is really focus around skills training or retraining. So as you think automation, you may be worried about cutting jobs. That in-law you hired that you can't really get rid of, you can retrain him to be your tech on a certain machine, and there's funds and help to do that, right? So again, don't look at replacing people. You're just technically in the spectrum of things, in the journey of things. You can look at automating and a reskilling of your work staff, right? You don't need to let them go. You may cut some jobs if that's where it needs to go, but the reality is it's not one or the other, okay? Any questions so far? Okay. So NRC is really one of the most interesting dynamics because, as we alluded earlier, innovation is broad. Obviously, if you're looking at new processes, there's a risk involved, which they love, but you're all in situations where automating and digitalization, is becoming very strategic for you. So there's a risk in you doing it, but there's also a risk in you not doing it, and that kind of falls perfectly under the NRC definition of what innovation and what those risks need to be. So again, if you're adopting or adapting existing processes, but modifying it for your sector, again, those kind of fit in that innovation realm and moving forward. Now, the other thing that NRC is huge is that the IRAP network has over 250 technology advisors across Canada. And what they're doing is really looking at, within their region, so within all of where you're from, they're really looking at potentially robotics companies that that have maybe gotten some funding on development of robots and processes, but now are looking for commercial partners to kind of bring it to industry. So there's funds in you taking that, they've already funded part of that, but their continuum is to make sure it gets commercialized and out there, and that's where you come in, right? So again, those types of connections can be done and are very important. Some of the activities, again, when we look at the priorities, green tech is great. Circular is even better. So what are you doing with your waste materials? Can you actually find ways to find other products' uses? These are all things that are going to continue to be at the forefront of the discussion in Canada for innovation. So these are really interesting times, because now when you're looking at automating or bringing robots, you can look at a circular economy as well, which will eventually, obviously lead you to more funding opportunities because it is of priority. Digitalization and automation. So whether you're going to, whether it's just developing an e-commerce perspective or right down to implementing important operational efficiencies such as client management software or even just production software, and getting that expertise is very important. RDAs often come in and they assess, and that's one of the things that innovation advisors will really help you do, is look at your needs, kind of assess potential hurdles, kind of lay out what the spectrum of the funding journey could be, and then start bringing in the right partners at the right time. And I think one of the biggest challenge with entrepreneurs is that we all have these flash of inspiration or flash of great ideas, and then you want to talk to a partner, but you're a little bit premature for that partner and you hit a dead end. And you get frustrated because you're like, you're there supposed to help me, but you're not willing to put money in yet, and you're not really checking the boxes yet. And that's fine. That's why innovation advisors were brought on, is to kind of help you hash out those early discussions, early ideas, lay it out, and then kind of bring the partners at the right time. So keep that in mind. The other important aspect is that each partner can help each other out as well. So for example, I mentioned BDC Advisory Services, which has a slate of different consultants for all different types of productivity discussions. That particular consultant could be funded by an RDA's strategic program for those types of discussions. So you think it's going to cost you $30,000 to hire a consultant, but really you might only be in it for 15 because another partner has that program that can help leverage that investment. So whether you're looking from the exploratory phase, the scenario and options, and trying to figure out which technology is going to best suit your needs, to getting in touch with the right partners at the right time, to the implementation of all of these, is a long cycle, but having innovation advisors at your disposal is really important. Now, should have led with this, but we're a free service. Kind of usually keep this at the end. But we're a free service, and that's really why we're gaining some traction, is because, obviously, if you can have these conversations for free at first, it always helps kind of help you lay out the groundwork and where you're going. Now, the Canadian Digital Adoption Program is an Innovation Canada program, and where it falls is you can grow your business online grant, and then you can boost your business technology. So it's two different phases of a program, but in reality, the Grow Your Business Online are micro grants to hire potentially quick advisors. There's actually a marketplace of potential advisors. These are marketing companies, firms that all kind of develop digital strategies. So you can either develop a digital strategy, you can use it for e-commerce tools, or just beef up your existing websites and things like that. And then to boost your technology, is really, you'll get about, it's delivered with 2 partners. So I said 1, which is your $15,000 to consult an advisor and develop a digital adoption plan itself. So they will lay it out for you. And then up to $100,000 from BDC to implement that plan. So we know that $100,000 from BDC is not necessarily going to reinvent your manufacturing process, but at the same time, you can kind of pick and choose your priorities. And the fun thing about this particular BDC loan, which is a first for BDC, is that it has 0% interest, because they are a bank, so there's a rate attached to almost all the lending they do. So the fact that they went with no interest and a repayment plan that is technically 6 years. You're technically paying by year 6. So that's really an interesting perspective, because again, to start repaying right away without, it allows you to really kind of put the money in and then get the ROI, a good portion of that ROI first, and then start making your payments. So an important one. Any questions on CDAP since I'm on it? Go ahead.
How does that?
Oh, I think you have to go to the mic because they're recording via audio. Apologies, sorry. I'm just a messenger.
How does that compare to the CTAP, now the DTAP, the provincial one? Can that be stacked on top of each other?
So that's an interesting question. Provincially, I won't speak for the province, but yes, technically those types of programs usually have some kind of threshold. It may not reach 75% because they may see a kind of a threshold, but you should be able to kind of merge these 2 offers into leveraging even more of that project.
Okay, thank you.
What province are you from? Ontario. So I can put you in contact with our regional director there, and they'll kind of put you in contact with an innovation advisor from Ontario, which would have a better scope and understanding of some of the provincial programs. Because again, I don't want to speak for the provinces, just because they are so different when it comes to their funding mechanisms. Being a maritimer, we find ourselves with more federal money than we do provincial money, and in other provinces it's the reverse, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but go ahead.
Follow-up question. Is this a one-time you can do that, or you can do that multiple
It's a one-time for now. The program has about 2 years left to its lifetime. And there's, from what I understand, there's all kinds of money still in the pot. So now is the time to start those conversations and really start looking at potentially adopting some digital solutions to your businesses. You're welcome. Any other questions? Oh.
So you are an independent, or you're working for the government, or?
Yeah, so I work for Innovation Canada, so I am an employee of the federal government. Again, I started in 2019 after close to 20 years in the private sector, and I started as an innovation advisor. So I was working with New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island companies to really try and focus on their growth, their needs, and kind of help them hash out those kind of long-term plans. So the same point that Luke made on NRC's kind of 5-year technology vision, we kind of approach it the same way from a growth strategy, not just with innovation, but we'll look at your technology roadmap, we'll look at your internal kind of processes and operational improvement potential, and then obviously your market expansion expectations if you go down that road and you kind of start looking at that. As I mentioned earlier, I know the U.S. is more of a player in your sectors than maybe abroad, but at the same time, those types of market expansion discussions are part of those plans. So yeah.
So do we reach out to you for?
Yeah. So at the end of my presentation, I have my contact info. I'll also have the RDD's contact info, so you can note it. But please feel free to send it to me, and I will make sure that they get it, and they will filter out to their innovation advisors, and they'll be in contact with you. So. So not allowed to have these conversations without talking about my actual program, which is the Accelerated Growth Service. But again, you know, the reality is the Innovation Advisors is the key to this particular program. It really is once you kind of look at your trajectory, we decide the level of service you're getting from our program perspective. And all that means is that whether you're an actual AGS kind of hitting every criteria, checking every box, and we nominate you as an AGS, versus working with an innovation advisor, still bringing partners together, but maybe not checking every box. Don't worry about that, because really our role is to work with entrepreneurs to get a better understanding of two things: their needs and their path forward, and how it relates to government funding and partnerships if they need them. So again, we really want to try and protect maybe your current relationships with potential funding partners, and obviously maximize your networks or create, you know, grow your networks with the right partners. So an interesting perspective is when you're exploring potential automation, there are universities that are dabbling in processes that you can literally hire through MyTax, and you can kind of hire through NRC, and you can hire through different parties to really kind of, again, create that spectrum. But what we want to help you is discover what best suits your needs, and based on your needs, based on your risk tolerance, based on your vision, and a 5-year vision is a great kind of benchmark. And then obviously, you know, at first it's going to look like this huge endeavor, but again, take comfort in knowing that you have real partners out there. And sometimes the riskier the project, the even more partners are going to tap into, because could be revolutionizing a perspective that doesn't exist yet, and there's a risk to it. And the fact that you're willing to take that risk, we're willing to take it with you. So that's a real interesting factor that people aren't always aware, because again, you think equipment, that's great. There's programs for just the equipment. All you need to kind of do is, this will increase my productivity 5-fold, and I really need this long term, and you kind of hash it out, and that's going to be an application for equipment, and that's great. But if you want to look at it from a process perspective, you know, it will require probably some investment in the exploratory phase, and then obviously some investment into the solutions proposed or the solution you choose. But again, those partners are there along the way, and are obviously experts in their programs, and can even go in deeper those conversations with you once you get introduced and kind of have those conversations. So any questions on potential activities you're thinking of, or wondering if there's funding for, or, you know, again, as I said, it can be adopting, we have a, geez, I gotta stop touching the mic, sorry. We have companies and clients that have looked at the automotive industry and have adopted certain processes to their manufacturing processes. So those are really interesting projects, because one, NRC's all over it, because there's risk involved and there's obviously some innovation to be captured. They will really put emphasis on protecting any new IP that you develop. It's part of their mandate. They will talk to you about cybersecurity as well, because we know that that is just on a rise, right, as an industry, not only as on the attack side, but we know that cyber security, if you're going digital, it's going to become a hotter topic than you may expect. But again, we have literal teams that dabble in cybersecurity within government that we will introduce you to. So if you can take anything away from my conversation today, is this: don't get overwhelmed. Talk to an innovation advisor first. Have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. Even if it's just broad strokes, that's a start. We will help you hash out some of those details. We will help you hash out some of those conversations and then kind of lay it out for you, what it can look like as a journey. And it is a journey because it's going to have ups and downs, and, you know, it's going to be frustrating, and sometimes government doesn't move as fast as the private sector. Trust me, I've been in it for 4 years now, and I know acutely that we're a bit slow on our end sometimes. But at the same time, we are really responsive to the greater scheme of your plans. So sometimes when it's too project focused and it's just this one little thing, you may hit a hurdle and you may hit a roadblock, but all you need to do is kind of step back, look at a broader project, and then all of a sudden more things align. Gets a bit scary, but at the same time, once it starts aligning, then you start seeing a clearer path to the end, which is, you know, the goal is to get you there. Go ahead.
When you say high growth companies, what constitutes a high growth?
High growth is any company that is innovating and on the cusp of really taking off. So usually, depending the sector, we're talking about, you know, if it's a tech sector, we're talking about 30% growth or more. If we're talking about the typical growth sector, or if I just want to average it out, it's usually double digits. But at the same time, if you're looking at your high growth, if you've developed a process you're about to commercialize, and your partners or the partners that you may have helped you already are like, this could revolutionize how we look at solving or treating or detecting cancer. I'm using a specific.
So it is not that a company is doing the same thing, just doubling it in 2 years.
No, exactly. But if there's productivity issues to be able to double, then you're part of a high growth kind of portfolio. And don't, you know, again, when I say the broad, vague strokes of a program, this kind of is a perfect example of a broad stroke, vague kind of statement. We want high growth, meaning, one, your technology is starting to get to the point where it's visibly important to not only you and your business, but to potentially your region or Canada or even on the global scale. And if you're looking at any significant amount of increase in revenue due to this project completion or getting there, then it's all part of that checking the box and kind of making it fit. Now, one of the most important things about applications is positioning of your project. So, as you know, very often the language you will choose will probably either get you in or eliminate you from getting funding. I say eliminate you not because it's not good enough, it's just most programs end up being oversubscribed. So if you look at an Ottawa announcement, hey, we've got $250 million going over the next 3 years for this particular activity. That's great. But does that mean New Brunswick gets $250 million? It will kind of get cut up, goes to usually the RDA, such as ACOA and FedNor and FedDev and PacificCan and all of these. Different levels of budget, obviously, because it's not just we're giving the same amount. They go by population, number of companies, number of potential, and they all put their application in to get their piece of the $250 million. Once that lands in their region, they have staff. So if there's 100 boots on the ground, then that means that gets chopped up in 100 different little budgets. So that particular person you're dealing with is looking for the best projects to allow him to spend his money as fast as possible to really engage these clients and get them over the next step or the next hurdle, right? That next phase in growth. So again, that wasn't the most encouraging thing I've just shared, but at the same time, that's why positioning is really important, and having these types of advisors at your disposal, it can be very beneficial to your long-term vision and kind of that program selection and that potential application. What we do know, or what we have noticed, is once you kind of start working with one partner, they're going to start looking for other partners. We're not the only ones who do it. Every partner kind of helps with potential partners. So if you're looking at, I need this piece of equipment because my productivity is going to be amazing, or is going to, go five folds what I'm doing right now, 5x, that's great. Is there an innovation play with this equipment? Are you adopting it? Well, I'd love to adopt it for this new use, but I just really want the equipment because that's all I can afford. Oh, well, NRC can help, you can hire one engineer and they'll cover 80% of their salary in order for them to adopt it for your new need. And that's where it becomes really interesting. And in Luke's case, one partner morphed into multiple partners, which morphed into a journey of successful projects, which has led him to his current situation. So again, whether you're looking at short-term, medium-term, or long-term, we can help you with all those discussions. We can help you really figure out which are the best programs. Because again, sometimes I get a lot of calls for Strategic Innovation Fund. In Atlantic Canada, it's a tricky program to deliver for two reasons. Traditionally and historically, statistically, our project sizes are not big enough for a SIF fund. Our innovation is great, but sometimes we're not first in Canada. So that is a big kind of checkbox you need to be checking. So if I'll use a protein manufacturing, which they use black soldier flies. There was a pretty important investment in Ontario, and then this company in New Brunswick wanted to dabble in the same thing and applied, but unfortunately couldn't get the same amount of funding because they had already funded a similar project. So they weren't unique to Canada anymore. It was unfortunate, but it was just because we were a few years behind in the development, which tends to be a trend here in Atlantic sometimes. We're sometimes a few years behind. But the reality is, once you're off-ramp from run program, sorry, your application got denied, it's not you're denied, good luck. It's more you're denied, talk to an innovation advisor. Maybe he can help you kind of downsize the program. And the reason I say downsize is right now, if you go to the Strategic Innovation Fund website, you'll see that it's a minimum of a $10 million request at 50%, which is a $20 million project. So already I'm getting giggles because that's kind of eliminating a lot of us here. It definitely eliminates a lot of companies in Atlantic. But when you look at the actual funded money that SIF has given out, $700 million between Ontario government and ISED for Toyota, $300 million for Michelin here in Nova Scotia. Those were huge. So the average is not, 40 million. The average is closer to $100 million project because you should be asking for about 50 million. And the other thing is that they haven't been funding 50%. They've been funding about 25, 27% of these projects. And then your financials get scrutinized a lot closer because, we're talking millions of dollars in funds that we're giving you. So if you're a startup, it doesn't matter how great your technology is, it's going to be really, really hard unless you have a PO already signed and waiting for delivery for, the amount to be able to repay back the money, right? So again, these are things that get a bit tricky, get a bit convoluted when you're having these big discussions, and that's why I didn't want to spend a lot of time speaking about the Innovation Canada programs themselves. CDAP is a fantastic one because it really is digitalization. One, there's money to tap into that consultant to really develop that strategy for you. And two, then there's the loan. And if you need equipment and other things, you don't necessarily need to go to BDC. BDC is one avenue, but you could go to your RDA for the equipment you need, or even some of additional consultings or things like that. So each regional development agency usually structures their funding with priorities as well. But again, the priorities usually really align with the national priorities, which is green economy, automation and digitalization, and then obviously market expansion, ESG, which is the environment, social, and governance of companies. Because again, more and more suppliers or even the supply chain needs, if your client says, I need your packaging to meet certain standards, do you know what the standards are and things like that? So again, we're trying to develop the right type of help to help our entrepreneurs with those types of questions as well. So that's obviously an interesting dynamic, but any other questions? So just a quick recap of what my program does and the criteria we're looking for. We're looking for usually $5 million or more in revenue. Now, that being said, it is not our most firm criteria because, again, to the point of cusp of greatness, if you're at 1 million, but you've got the opportunities and the potential, usually it's a partner conversation. So we will reach out to existing partners that may know or may not know you, and get their thoughts on the type of technology and things like that. And if we deem that you should be surrounded by a table of partners, we will nominate you and really get the team to you. If you don't fit these criteria, such as the growth, a significant growth rate, again, typically 10% or more, commitment and willingness to invest resources. So if you're not willing to put some skin in the game, you're going to hit major roadblocks. You're expansion driven, so obviously you want to grow. You're looking to either X your productivity or even just expand from a market perspective. You've got the operational and financial and managerial capacity to undertake the AGS because we're bringing 5, 6, 7, 10 different partners to your table. You're going to pretty much present your growth strategy that your innovation advisor will help you kind of establish and put on a PowerPoint, and then really have those types of discussions. You'll talk about your pain points. You'll talk about your strengths, your weaknesses, the costs of all your projects, as many quotes as you've been able to get. I've got this piece of equipment. Here are 3 different quotes. I know it costs between $100,000 and $300,000. I really have eyes on the $300,000 because it's giving me an extra 2x of productivity. Those types of conversations is what partners need to know and understand in order to best prepare you for potential application and potential funding. And then the capacity to take on the AGS is are you too busy to sit down a couple hours every month or every few months to have that partner discussion? Because every partner is pretty busy, so they all take time to get to you. And then, and of course we live in a hybrid world now, so if a lot of meetings sometimes I can't make the 2-hour drive to your facility, but I'll be on the call virtually, and attendance and participation has been tremendous that way because prior to the pandemic, if people weren't making it, they weren't at the meeting, and then we would proxy for those departments, speak to their programs and things like that. But now with the virtual world, everybody kind of is there in some way, shape, or form. So that's usually not the issue anymore. So the AGS is a program delivered by Innovation Canada but it's an advisory program. So there's no money attached to the AGS itself. It's the ability to bring partners together, and they hold the funds to really help you invest in your projects. Some of the partners are listed there. We have over 42 registered federal, provincial, and community partners, from incubators, accelerators, research hubs to the partners themselves, such as NRC, the RDAs, EDC, Global Affairs, and BDC. So again, if you've got a partner in mind, that's great, but we will always try to bring in the relevant partner at the relevant time. Do we get it wrong sometimes? We do, but they're just a call away, so we usually circle back fairly quickly. Our team of innovation advisors tries to move at the speed of business, but of course, we deal a lot with partners that move a bit slower, but still are pretty responsive, and that kind of goes down to the individual level, but at the same time, partners have been very supportive of the AGS and its clientele and portfolio. First things first, Innovation Canada's blog. You can literally go to the ISED website, Innovation Canada, or even just Google First Things First blog. This is a great website to kind of help you. There's always these professional blogs, kind of articles popping up. It can talk about, as the slide mentions, firming up your finance options, firming up your applications, best practices, and when preparing applications and things like that. So if you're really new I would suggest you take a look at them, at the blog, because it'll give you a lot of perspective and great insight. But again, don't forget that we're there to help as well. And, you know, a lot of us prefer the in-person contact, so I totally understand if we're going to be getting calls moving forward. Here's the regional leaders. We have George Haisku in BC, Stephanie Stafura in the Prairies, Adam Pender in Southern Ontario GTA. We have our regional deputy director, Pierre, in Quebec, and then myself for Atlantic. Their information are there, but please feel free to reach out to me. My information is here. That's my team here. We have representation on Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and here in New Brunswick as well. But again, I know we're close a bit over time, but if there's any additional questions or concerns or comments or anything, let me have it.
That slide deck, do you give that to us?
I've shared it already, a PDF format, so feel free to share it around. Yeah.
Send it to members. Thank you. Perfect. And we also have access to the recorded session.
At one point, the CDAP applications for becoming a digital advisor were closed. Have those opened, and could potentially a shop owner who is familiar with innovation and with the process become a digital advisor and help other peers in the industry?
That is a good question. I have not received an update on it reopening. I know there's plans to reopen it, because I think where the digital advisor marketplace was originally kind of, people were applying, but we didn't get enough coast-to-coast representation. So I know like part of the reason CDAP is a bit slow to adopt here is mainly because there's not that many companies from the marketplace here to help. So they're a bit reluctant being pawned to Montreal or Toronto firms to try and work with them at a distance. So the short answer is we're hoping to. Not sure exactly when we're doing it, but it's supposed to open. Technically, anybody can apply, but it is kind of a digital marketing perspective. If you're really focusing on robotics or other types of digitalization, be careful, because if you're a creator of digital solutions, if you will, not planning, but more of a software, like your product is a software for these types of things, you have to remain agnostic, right? So the whole goal is to be able to shop around and not be sold that company or that advisor's product. More so it's a consultation and then a marketing plan or a digital plan put together. Now, not saying that you can't be the deliverer eventually, but again, it's a bit tricky. And I know that that's been part of the application process as well. For example, we have robotics companies here that have applied because they develop marketing or digital strategies, right? And that's what they're focusing. But they wanted to stay, it was made clear that they would stay away from pitching their stuff all the time, right? It's an option, but we'll give you more options too, because we have to try and remain as an advisor to deliver that service. We wanted these players to be as agnostic as possible. So that's where we stand.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Again, on the advisors, on the consultants who are, let's say, certified in the provincial program, would the federal program accept them, or do you need to recertify on a federal level?
That's a good question as well. We've seen if they are, so the federal CDAP has a list of potential provincial players that you could bypass that. So if you've already developed, so let me rephrase that. If you've already started working with a partner, provincially or federally, to develop a digital strategy, you can have that digital strategy reviewed, and you won't have to develop a new one. You can use that one and then go straight to the BDC loan. It's a bit case by case, but at the same time, they have a growing list, because again, a lot of our federal partners are kind of, oh, well, this company didn't register, but we use them and we've funded them through the years to help deliver these digital strategies or prepare these digital strategies for companies. Can we have them added to the list? And we've been very responsive there. So I'm assuming that it is an assumption. I'm assuming they may be already on the list, so you could. But again, we can have those types of conversations and try to push the envelope if needed. Not guaranteeing the perfect outcome, but just we are aware. And again, when these programs are new, such as CDAP, you kind of wrinkle out the process as you go, because we can't just wait around until we launch. We often launch things that aren't perfect, and then we try and wrinkle them out as we go. But I think there's a lot of value there as well, long term.
Just one question here. When you say all the partners, so are these third party or are these government?
So when I mention partners, I usually mean Government of Canada partners, such as other departments, agencies, crowns, or boards and all of that. But most partners within government have programs and supports for third-party use. Usually, if any change occur, it's usually just the level of investment they're going to help. So obviously, and I know automation is a bit of a backwards conversation when we say the hot topic was, can you create jobs with the money you leverage? And that was always a hot topic. How many jobs can you create? Now with automation, it's not so much how many jobs can you cut, but how more efficient can you become with automation? So the reality is simple. We still want you to try and hire internally, and you may tap into more support, but you can use third party because you don't need an engineer at your firm or your business, but you could use an engineering firm to figure out your new process, your new production layout. And sometimes that's the first step. It's, are you running at your most efficient right now? Let's try and year one, let's see if we can't improve this with a 5-year goal of adding equipment as you go. The more sensors and robotics you add, the more money you tap into, because now you're hitting new priorities, and then kind of moving forward in that way. But yeah, so you can use third party, but usually, for example, if I look at NRC themselves, if you hire internally an engineer, 80% of their wages they'll cover. So you pay your engineer, and then you claim and report back, and they reimburse you that wage at 80%. If you're using a firm, they'll cover their rates at 50%. So you're not tapping into as much money, but there's still support there, because again, the government is not only here to support the individual businesses, but we're here to support the circular economy of trying to connect development firms with industry clients that are trying to adapt these types of developments into their businesses and really try to keep the ball moving. Now, you don't necessarily double dip. So if an R&D project is happening at a robotics firm and you want to adopt or adapt, you'll get money for that adoption. They'll get money for their funding in the research, right? You're not tapping into the research money. You're actually tapping into the implementation money, right? So again, different spectrums, but we try and keep it as circular and promoting as many businesses as we can. Now, that being said, each individual will usually stay as agnostic again as we can. So if you ask like, I need an engineering firm, who do you know? Well, my best friend might be an engineer, but I'm not going to give you just his name. We're going to look at, well, these are the firms that you have. These are the top 3 our clients are selecting as of late. And then you make all decisions, because we are not your consultants, nor are we your employees. We are just there to advise, provide you as much clear and concise information as possible, and then kind of work with you and keep helping you kind of scope out, figure out your needs, and kind of put them in place and move it forward, really.
But to file the application for one of the programs, do you need to hire a third party, or you help us do that?
Usually, so that's the one thing that there's a certain level of help we can give, but we can't do it for you, because that would be a bit of a conflict. So you can, here in New Brunswick, I know there are quite a few firms that literally work on developing plans and then working out the applications themselves, right? So they are not only creating your strategy, but they are applying for all your programs as well for you. So great use of resources. Innovation advisors will not go into, we can review applications for you, help with the wording, help with potential positioning, ask pertinent questions to make sure that you've thought it through, and then try to position your applications like that, but we don't fill in the applications for you, no. And again, that level of coaching exists with any of the government partners that you're working with, but they can't do the application for you because that would be a conflict of their job, because obviously they know a bit too much to be the person doing it for you. And then most applications are never reviewed by the account manager that you're dealing with. It's always hire a different department in their organization that kind of reviews the application. They may have a back and forth with the account manager to just get a better understanding if things are missing. But usually that's why the account manager coaches you, is to make sure that you have the best application so it doesn't get kind of pushed aside because it's incomplete or they need more info while entertaining other applications, and then you kind of miss out. So again, it's not perfect, but it does kind of work in that way.
Very interesting, obviously, with all the questions. You have the contact information. We're going to run out of time, guys. So I thank you very much.
Yes, merci beaucoup. Merci, thank you.